we at the Delete Everything podcast would like to invite you to dine with us this evening as we discuss the entirety of the British royal family in this, the first of two parts. May I introduce to you His Royal Highness Patrick Michael Martins Wall, Prince of Wales, Duke of Cornwall, Duke of Rothesay, Earl of Carrick, Earl of Chester, Baron of Renfrew, Lord of the Isles, Prince and the Great Intendant of Scotland, Knight Royal Companion of the Most Noble Order of the Garter, Extra Knight of the Oldest and Most Noble Order of the Wild Thistle, Grand Master and Main Knight of the Great Cross of the Most Honourable Order of the Bath, Member of the Order of Merit, Knight of Order of Australia, Fellow of... Shut the fuck up, I'm not done yet.
So many titles.
Stop. Fellow of the Queen's Order of Service, Member of Her Majesty's Most Honourable Private Council, Her Majesty's Field Helper, and host of Delete Everything.
So, yay! That's so many titles. Is that one person? Is any one person all those things?
Yeah, that's Prince or King Charles.
Really?
Yeah.
That's a lot of titles.
Yeah, His Royal Highness King Charles. I mean, also King of England would have thrown on there.
Yeah. No, well.
But they forgot Lord of the Andals in the First Amendment.
Lord of Winterfell. Hey, everybody. Welcome back. Welcome back to Delete Everything Podcast with me, Patrick Wall, and my co-host here. You say it.
Oh, no, you're supposed to say His Royal Highness Prince Riley Dexter Bowen, Prince of Wales, Duke of Cornwall.
That's not my job,
etc. at all.
It's not my job, dog. That's Riley. He's here too. So, hey guys, thanks for tuning in again. Hopefully again, or for the first time. Thank you for that too. Just so you know, if you guys really want to show us how much you love us, get on whatever platform you're streaming on. Spotify, Amazon,
Apple Podcasts.
Apple Podcasts is a biggie. Apple Podcasts,
iHeartRadio now, and
yeah, we got a lot of those things. Apple Podcasts. If you like the show, leave us a review. 5 stars is awesome. If you want to say something about us or to us, leave us a little note in there, a little love note. A little love note's always nice.
Also, send us an email at deleteeverythingpodcast@gmail.com.
Yeah. So just so you know, if it is your first time, or if it's your I don't know, what's this, like their 8th episode, something, 7th, 8th, 9th
episode,
something like that.
36th recording.
We are Delete Everything Podcast, Riley and I, and occasionally a guest. And basically the whole thing that we do is we look at deleted histories, partial histories, things we know little snippets about, but not really the whole story. Just things that as a society nobody really talks about. Nobody really, or very few people at least, know all of the facts surrounding it. And so we get together and we talk about it and we intersperse it with stupid ass jokes and giggling. And that's basically our job.
That's pretty much it. It's history, dicks.
Yeah. So we are a comedy podcast. No, I'm sorry. We're a history podcast.
Which one is it?
We're a history podcast.
Hashtag comedy, hashtag history.
We're a history podcast disguised as comedy. You know what it is? Here's what it is, right? When you lay siege to the castle, right? You finally the siege engines break the walls down, and all your troops get up in there, and you're like, yay, we conquered the castle, the comedy castle, right? We got the comedy castle, it's ours. And then you start going down through all the catacombs and all that stuff, and you find a door down there, a secret door, and you open it up, and boom, it's just chock full all the way up to the wall. Solid gold bricks of history, baby. That's what we didn't know. That's what we came for, but we got it.
It's pretty good. That's pretty good.
I like making up these
to the comedy castle.
I figured it was appropriate for our episode today.
The comedy castle actually was a. This is a true story. Comedy Castle was a stand-up club in Royal Oak, Michigan, just a few blocks from where I grew up. That's true. Drew Carey would fucking play there and shit.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I don't know why when you started in with it, I thought you were going to say something stupid, and I just immediately started.
It was 11 AD when the Comedy Castle was taken first by the Visigoths.
So, we also have some social media stuff. If you guys want to send us a message, we'll plug all that stuff, the Patreon, all that stuff at the end of the show. So without further ado, this week we are doing the history of the British monarchy. And oh my God, I don't even know how to like describe to you what researching this week was like.
Was it like looking at a big white sheet of paper with fucking gnarly teeth?
A big white sheet of paper with shitty teeth that likes to fuck other white sheets of paper that are their cousins.
Big old cousin fuck. Hey, if you're tuning in from England, listen. I understand.
Hopefully you don't like your monarchy.
Listen, if you heard our president's episode already,
oh yeah, we talk mad shit about.
We're
gonna
talk some shit, and I just gonna have just tune out.
We're gonna talk a lot of shit about your monarchy, much like we talked a lot of shit about our presidents. We're just gonna do it like this the whole time.
Yeah, we're gonna be wobbly jubbly the whole time that we're
you fucking queen. So yeah, dude, I can't even tell you. Like if I never hear anything about the goddamn British monarchy again for the rest of my life, it is interesting. But here's so brief like layout of how I do the research for this stuff. Most of the time when I'm researching a show,
wasted.
First thing I do is masturbate.
Yeah, you just
second thing I do is just
cover myself in oil, olive oil.
Second thing I do is chug a half a gallon of Old Granddad, and eat a Pop-Tart. And then, anyway, no, the first thing I do really is like, I'll go to Wikipedia because it's usually the quickest, sort of briefest, like sort of concise synopsis. I can usually get a pretty, and then I kind of branch out from there. Like as I hit tidbits and stuff like that, I don't I branch out from there because obviously I don't want the show title to be Patrick reads Wikipedia at you while Riley chuckles. It's a long title and it's not as cool as delete everything.
I wouldn't call it chuckling. Jordling, maybe?
Chortling, yeah.
Chortling.
So, but the branches off of this tree are just, I mean, it was so what I ended up doing was I basically copied and pasted like the synopses off of Wikipedia. And then I sort of interspersed it with my own stuff as I was going down the branches and doing all. There's a lot of stuff that just literally there's not enough time in 2 episodes to cover it all. I mean, like I didn't go into a lot of the marriages and who was whose daughter and who was whose cousin and granddaughter and mother and this and that. I didn't get into a lot of that.
Well, yeah, because by the year 15, you're 9,000 people deep.
It literally like I started off doing it that way, and then so quickly I was like, I can't do this. This is gonna be insane.
One of my favorite things that pops up from time to time in I don't know, like a Sherlock Holmes story or like a comic book with like a detective in England or something, is they invariably get around to going to like a mental institution and it, if it's like way out in the downs somewhere. Yeah. And this has occurred in many different publications. The detective goes to one of these institutes and it's just chock full of inbred royal family members. just the third cousin of the sixth cousin, the twice removed.
The weird one we couldn't let out of the bedroom. The weird one we had to keep in the dungeon for the first 12 years of their life until they somehow got massively huge and buff and snapped a guard's neck, and then we just had to put him in here. So
Bronson.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So we're going literally all the way back to the beginning. We're going back to the Anglo-Saxon period. We're going back to the fucking 800s. Right?
Oh, cool. I played Assassin's Creed Valhalla, so I know all about this.
Oh, perfect. So you're an expert already. We can hang this episode up.
Listen, I will say, I've always maintained that history is a very permutable, difficult thing. It's a tricky snake to get a hold of. I think that the Assassin's Creed series has done a fantastic job of putting some sort of historical context, even though it's 99% bullshit.
Well, I'm going to say, let's just jump in. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So, starting in the Anglo-Saxon period, right? So, the Anglo-Saxon period went sort of from like the 800s AD to 1066 AD, right? So we're talking like mid 800s. The Vikings have basically conquered all of what was called the Heptarchy, right? Originally, the British, the main island of England was 7 Anglo-Saxon kingdoms. So they were East Anglia, Essex, Kent, Mercia, Northumbria, Sussex, and Wessex, right?
Funny enough, big part of Assassin's Creed Valhalla.
Oh God. and by the way, a lot of those names are still recognizable today. You know what I mean? Like Essex, we've all heard of Essex and Sussex and Kent. But anyway, so by 1865, the Vikings have conquered all of these kingdoms with the exception of Wessex, right? So Wessex survived under the rule of Alfred the Great, who ruled from like 871 to 899. His son, Edward the Elder, from 899 to 924 AD, and his grandson, Ethelstan.
Hold on a second. He was the elder, and he lived to 25 years old?
No. He only ruled for those years.
Okay.
These are their rules, yeah. And then Ethelstan, who was Alfred the Great's grandson, who they basically, beat back the Vikings and gradually consolidated the rest of England and said, okay, this is us. So Ethelstan was the first one that adopted the title King of the English. And so he's basically considered the founder of the English monarchy, right? Because they sort of got the majority of this land back from the Vikings and were able to hold it.
English coming from Anglo-English?
Yes.
Yeah. There's a lot of, I think for context, listeners that aren't super big into England shit should know that a lot of the language and a lot of the titles and a lot of the names of old English stuff over time permutes, warps, and kind of like comes down.
Well, Saxony is was where modern day France is. Obviously, England is just above the channel from that. And so Anglo-Saxons was the name given to basically people from the French continent that went across the channel, and there were the Saxons. There was another like prefix on that. I can't remember what it is, but Anglo-Saxons were those who lived on the islands north of the channel.
To give for a little, you guys want a little more background of like the prehistory of that, you can check out the Celtic Holocaust on Dan Carlin's Hardcore History. It's fantastic. It's a fantastic work. It's about the Romans moving through Europe.
Oh, I know, and I believe that Ethelstan is covered at great length by Mr. Carlin.
Because that's a fantastic.
I can hear him in my ear right now going, Ethelstan.
That's a good Dan Carlin.
Dan Carlin, wasn't it? I've never tried it before.
We mentioned before we're big fans of Dan Carlin. So,
yeah, shout out Dan Carlin.
Yeah, he hasn't covered this period of history as actively on his stuff, so we're just picking up for him.
So we're just better than him. We're just better than Dan Carlin, is what we're saying.
I didn't say that.
So at the time, succession for whoever was the next king of England, right, or king of the English, was not strictly based on primogeniture, which is the direct line of descendants.
I've been known. People have said that I have some primogeniture.
I can't stop thinking because primo in at least I know for sure Portuguese and Spanish means cousin. So that means a whole different thing. It's not primogeniture. It's oh god,
like, ooh, primo.
My primogeniture. But so obviously that led to a bunch of complexities when it came to successions and power struggles and all this stuff. So
I'm gonna make so many cousin fucking jokes on this episode.
Oh my god, in a British accent, I hope. So we're gonna fast forward a few decades. So by the time we get to Edward the Confessor, who I believe was Ethelstan's grandson.
Why'd they call him the Confessor?
Because he confessed to things.
He's a fucking. He just would be like, "Hey, did you do this thing?" He's like, "Yes, it was I."
Edward.
Even if he didn't do it,
yeah,
I did that.
So at that point, by the time his rule was from 1042 to 1066. At that point, the Anglo-Saxon government had gotten a little bit more sophisticated. They had a treasury that had sort of developed into a permanent institution. Edward had appointed the first chancellor, yada, yada, yada. But at the same time, he was facing challenges from the Godwinson family, right? the Godwinsons were like one of the sort of premier noble families in England at the time, and so they were sort of like vying for the throne. I'm touching the Tommy knockers again.
The prefix for all this stuff, like, yeah, obviously if you're speaking English, you can pick it up pretty easy, but Godwinson would be translated like son of Godwin, so there's probably a big fucking... I'm a Bowen, which means son of Owen, because I'm from the British descendants. But, fun fact, that could be permuted and found to be rooted in Odin if you go back far enough. So.
I thought it was like bowman, like you guys made bows.
No, my name Riley means of rye, so probably a grain guy. It was really good, like whiskey so much. You know?
Yeah. I don't think they were doing rye whiskeys so much back then.
I guarantee they were. Does it ferment? Can it get you fucked up?
Not the rye whiskey that you are accustomed to in this day and age. I'm straight up
not
rot
like the
gut.
percentage. I'm just talking like they'll fucking rot some bread and
some little cottage in the middle of nowhere with a straw roof, just pulling out rot gut jars from the ground, kicking a mule over.
We're talking about the
get over. I have to get me jars.
This is the home of whiskey. England, Scotland.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you gotta go up a little bit.
That's Scotch whiskey.
Anywho. So this Godwinson family's getting all blah, blah, blah,
what does that mean? They're fucking each other?
No, they're causing trouble.
That sound sounded like they were fucking each other.
They're causing trouble with Edward the Confessor, right? So Edward is considered to be the last king of the House of Wessex. So we're already having a whole like the family dynamic as far as who's in charge in terms of succession.
We're only looking at like 70 or 80 years on that, right? Like, yeah. Mm-hmm. So like the whole from like king of the English to like the end of the reign of Wessex.
Okay, so Edward the Confessor had no heirs. So Harold Godwinson was crowned king, quote unquote, right? He basically crowned himself king, and him and the people that sort of
it's a fucking hell of a title.
This sort of supported him.
We crown thee king, quote unquote.
Right, but I crown me king. But he then immediately faced challenges from Duke William of Normandy being in France, right? And King Harold Hardrada of Norway. So Normandy obviously is a province of France. And this is at a time when France was sort of split after the power vacuum, like when Charlemagne died in 814 AD. Mm-hmm. During the time of Charlemagne, he had sort of, consolidated all of France into his empire. He died. All these little provinces started infighting, yada, 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 right?
Homie in Norway there, is that part of the Saxon lineage?
Perhaps. I don't know. I would imagine so if he was contesting, Harold Godwinson being on the throne. So after a bunch of battles, yada, 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 which, by the way, include the famous Battle of Hastings, William, who we will refer to as William the Conqueror from here on out, but yeah, William, who was the Duke of Normandy, he emerged victorious. He got coronated as king on Christmas Day of 1066, and Godwinson, Harold Godwinson's reign lasted for 9 months after crowning himself king.
The William Henry Harrison of the British royals.
Yeah, right. So that basically is the end of what historians call the Anglo-Saxon period.
William the Conqueror, sometimes called William the Bastard. Mm-hmm. That's fun.
Yeah, they've got fun names.
He's the first Norman king of England, so that's your first Viking king.
Yeah. So this is where the historians would refer to the House of Normandy.
Oh shit, he's a descendant of Rollo, the Duke of Normandy, or no, the Duke of. Okay, Rollo was a Viking lord that had a position in France in Normandy for like a really long time. So this is the, you could say, like curtailed like Norman lineage
Mm-hmm.
that has sworn fealty, right? So like
by this point, the Vikings had already come down through the channel and everything, and were also attacking, coastal France.
But you've got Normans who are loyal to the like the Saxon lineage, working for the English as well, and that's where this fucking guy comes from.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the guy, but
Northman.
Norman. So my guy Norman. So anyway, during this period of the House of Normandy, England was basically what we know now when we look at the British Isles, basically excluding Ireland, excluding Scotland, excluding Wales, but basically that, the big island, most of the big island there, and then like the top of France, the tippy top of France, if you were to look at England during the House of Normandy, right?
Yeah, I'm looking at some of the shit William the Conqueror pulled to the north.
Oh yeah, he's well, we're keeping it. We're trying to compress because we have so fucking much.
I don't know, it's just an interesting monarch. He did some war crimes and did a thing here. The harrying of the North is a good one.
Hey Riley,
yep,
they all did.
Yeah, the Brits.
There are so many things that
not like us Americans.
There are so many things that I don't even touch on, and I will touch on them sort of as a blanket statement here in a little bit, but. But after the Norman conquest, right, after William becomes the king of England, right, basically at that point, the English monarchy and French politics get super intertwined and stay that way for hundreds of years after this, right? The king claimed ownership of all the land and all the estates of the old Anglo-Saxon nobility. Those were all confiscated and redistributed to French-speaking Anglo-Normans. And, that was just feudalism, baby. Yeah, that's how we do it.
That's your standard motherfuckers in castles telling people and shit to...
Yeah.
At what point does...
Well, and not only motherfuckers in castles. I'm the new king. Y'all get the fuck out of that castle. It's mine now. I'm sending my homie over. It's his castle now.
At what point does the lady of the lake, her arm clad in shimmering samite, hold Excalibur aloft from the bosom of the water?
We've got some years,
signifying by divine providence that Arthur was king of the Britons.
We're not there yet.
Oh,
we're not there yet. But yeah, that was basically, and other than that, they kept the basic system of what the English had established as government moving forward from there. But they also introduced some new practices, royal forests, and forest law, which basically
the king's forest.
Yeah, limited the rights of landholders within those areas. And they built a bunch of castles across the country. A lot of the castles are built in that like early 1000s AD period. William the Conqueror died at like 59ish. He reigned for 21 years. He died. He was around 59. We're not sure exactly when he was born, but he lived. He was the king for 21 years. He died around 59.
Well, back then, somebody's born. It's like he was born between the first and second thaws of the new moon.
Yeah, basically. But he was the one who ordered the construction of the White Tower, which is the central keep of the Tower of London, which became sort of the symbol of like the monarchy. But yeah, he was succeeded by he had two sons. Right, he had William II, and he had Henry. William II succeeded him first. William II reigned for about 13 years. He died when he was like 43, 44 years old, and then Henry I took over. Right, Henry I reigned for 35 years. He died at 66, 67 years old, depending on who you listen to, and he did a few notable things. He formalized the royal household, established the office of Chief Justiciar. He made royal justice more accessible. I don't know what royal justice is. It sounds
usually
like
it's getting your balls cut off.
It sounds like a movie featuring Rowan Atkinson.
He's just bumbling about.
Doing like a bumbling 007, and it's called Royal Justice.
Well, William the Conqueror put together a series of laws that were like, varying crimes against the kingdom would result in castration, blinding.
Yeah. I'm sure.
Shit like that.
Oh, I'm sure.
So, royal justice.
But he did do one thing. He married Matilda of Scotland, which united the House of Normandy and the House of Wessex, which the Normans kind of said boot scoot, right? And then he's like, well, my dad fucking killed your dad, but
kind of still sort of the boss around this bitch.
yeah. So yeah, he united those. However, here's what's funny. She wasn't an actual part of the former Wessex royal family in the UK. Her grandfather was defeated and exiled by Edward the Confessor's step-grandfather in all those years that we fast-forwarded through.
Mm-hmm.
So Edward the Confessor's grandmother's new hubby.
Jesus Christ!
I know, that's why I couldn't.
Fucking
I started doing this
sister
and I was like, I
cousins.
can't.
Fuck.
Right? He defeated Matilda of Scotland's grandfather. And yeah, that was it. So it's sort of like a question mark because there was so much family swapping that it's like,
Cousin fucker.
is she part of the actual lineage of the original Wessex line of kings, and if so, how? In what way? I mean, I'm telling you, dude, you look at these family trees and it's just like,
Yeah, how do you
mind-boggling.
even track the
mind-boggling.
how do you track the lineage from here to there to here to there?
God, you have to have some sort of like just inferior. I almost said inferior, superior level of
genes.
of comprehension and analysis. You have to be a human computer brain. You have to be autistic, I guess. You have to have
earlier
this
year, my aunt sent me some genealogy stuff that was just my grandmother's on my father's side. Genealogy, like coming from England and getting into like the New England area. And fuck me, dude, like 150 years of trying to track where the fuck everybody's going and coming from, and like, ugh, no thanks.
Well, so
you know what it is? You backtrack far enough, you just and when you stop loving the people that you're reading about, then that's
you're
done.
just like that's or
enough.
when they stop being interesting.
Yeah.
It's like he built wheels for 8 years and then died at 30.
Cousin, second cousin, and don't care about these ones.
Yeah, right. So
Built wheels.
Henry the First, like I said, married Matilda of Scotland, and even though, you know, all the oath stuff and all that, you know, she was super unpopular because she had ties through marriage to Anjou, which is another province of France and Normandy's traditional like enemy. Like they did a lot of beefing back and forth, right?
Yeah, so they did a lot of like beef Wellington. Anjou is that's the meat sauce that comes with prime rib, right?
Yeah,
that's the region.
That's where it's
Anjou.
that's the region where it's made and shipped from. It's all
if it's not from there, it's sparkling meat sauce.
Sparkling, it's going the same direction. It's only authentic Anjou if it's from the Anjou region of France. Anjou, Anjou, Anjou. So, so because of those ties, when Henry I died in 1135, and in spite of his dying wishes, his nephew Stephen of Blois, Blois, I'm not going to say Blois. Stephen of Blois sounds like a town in Idaho. No, that's just because Boise. Is that why I said that?
Yeah,
Probably.
Bloisy.
Stephen of Blois.
You can't. If you say Bloisy, you can say it in English accent. Really, it just makes it Bloisy.
Bloisy.
Wobbly jubbly Bloisy, my son.
So Stevie B, who by the way, if you don't know,
it's pronounced Blois.
Yeah, Blois.
Blois.
Jesus, goddamn.
I got a translator.
Okay, great. So yeah, Stevie B laid claim to the throne, and even though he was Henry I's nephew, and Henry I did not want him to take over the throne, he said, fuck it. So he laid claim to the throne and took power with the support of most of his barons, right? Matilda challenged his reign, and effectively England went into a period of civil war known as the Anarchy.
Ooh, the Anarchy.
Which happened for like 15 years, 1138 to 1153.
Oh, we lost mother in the Anarchy.
Just wait a fucking 100 years, it'll be the Black Death.
That's a good one.
So while Stephen stayed in power, it was pretty precarious. Like he wasn't really able to do much. So he eventually had to compromise for the sake of peace. And he and Matilda's sort of backers signed the Treaty of Wallingford, by which Stephen adopted Matilda's son, Henry Fitz-Empress. Henry Fitz-Empress.
Fitz-Empress?
Like think of Fitzpatrick, F-I-T-Z, and then you start with a new uppercase letter in Patrick. It's that, but it's Fitz, and then Empress, spelled like Empress.
Huh.
Fitz-Empress. So according to this treaty, Stephen had to adopt Matilda's son and
Not hate him his whole life.
he had to adopt him as his own son and heir and name him the heir.
That would have been an interesting thing to have happen in your life, I think. It's like, fuck, the person that I hate the most that I tried to kill, I am now essentially de facto father of their child.
Yeah, right.
So how do you deal with it? Do you what if you like the kid? What if you don't like the kid?
I don't know.
Like,
I don't know. But lo and behold, that was the end of the Norman kings. That's it, baby. Now we're in the Angevin kings.
the Angevin.
The Angevin kings. So during this, and we'll talk about this in a second, but at this point, like England ends up getting Wales. They end up getting Scotland, all through, battles and wars and going ham. And this is, again, just a reoccurring theme. That we're going to keep going through this, and it's going to be battles in Scotland, battles in Wales, battles in France, battles in here, battles in there.
I want to bring up here that after the war and the anarchy, after Stephen,
Yeah.
after he died, Henry Plantagenet was crowned as Henry II. So that's two. Mm-hmm. We got two now. There are going to be a fuckload of them. Keep track.
Oh yeah, we're gonna go. Wade. We're gonna get
the fifth is my
real
favorite.
into Henry's. I like Henry VIII. I'm Henry VIII. I am.
I like
Isn't
Henry.
that the song?
I like Henry V because he was.
You're a big Anglican fan. You're a big fan of Anglicanism.
I guess we'll get there. I don't know if we'll get there or not, but the battle between France and England during Henry V's reign was based over a case of tennis balls.
That's actually exactly where we're gonna stop and pick up on part two.
Oh, we're do Henry V
is like the cutoff,
Cool.
like before we get to him, like the last king before him.
Henry IV. Shakespeare wrote the play Henry IV, and it is the most boring like dick piss you ever read in your whole fucking life. Like it's widely renowned as like if you're like a huge Shakespearean scholar, you read Henry IV because that shit sucks.
Gross. So Henry Fitz-Empress is crowned Henry II. And he reigned for 35 years. He became king at about 21 years old. He died at about 56. It was a pretty crazy reign. He did do some important things, legal reforms, some things that are still like the foundation of England's legal system. He invaded Wales, forced William the Lion of Scotland to recognize him as a feudal overlord, and he confirmed his feudal overlordship of most of Ireland. He also had a clash with Thomas Becket, the Archbishop of Canterbury.
Oh, that's a whole thing.
The Archbishop of Canterbury.
That's the whole Becket thing.
Oh yeah. So it was basically over like rights and privileges of the church versus rights and privileges of the crown.
Not people. Just these two abstracts.
Yeah, well, but here's what
History
happened.
Is great.
Here's what happened to old Thomas Becket. He was murdered by followers of the king inside of the Canterbury Cathedral.
Yeah, it's a hugely famous. There's actually a pretty cool movie, Becket.
Yeah.
Then there's another one after that. Some shit.
So, but I mean that basically, again, this is an overarching theme of this sort of struggle between secular and ecclesiastical powers, right? The church versus the monarchy.
If you're listening from England, I know you learned all this shit in elementary school. We're
willfully ignorant.
We're Americans. We don't know shit about England.
Willfully ignorent, I think, is the right term.
We did a whole bunch of shit to not learn about England.
Yeah, no shit, right?
We're just trying to bring it back.
A whole
okay.
war. Henry was succeeded by his son, Richard I. You may know him as Richard Lionheart.
Ah, yes.
Turns out Richard the Lionheart was not as fucking cool and like, he's always sort of. Richard Lionheart was in all the
Robin Hoods.
The Robin Hoods, right?
Yeah.
And he's always sort of this like
he had the heart of a lion.
Magnanimous, like wonderful ruler. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was kind of a piece of shit.
Yeah.
So
also French.
They were all French.
Yeah, they're all of the people we're discussing had Ponty little French accents. And you know what? If you're listening from France,
Shut up.
shut up. You know what you fucking sound like. Don't give me that shit.
It's a very petit accent. But so
Je suis Napoleon, vive la France.
so Richard only had a 10-year reign. He was only king for 10 years. He died at 41. So here's what's funny, and here's kind of like where, like, Richard went to France and joined Louis VII and his older brother in rebelling against their father, right?
Ballsy.
Yeah, they rebelled against Henry I, right? Or I'm sorry, Henry II, right? We're on Henry II, right? So fucking monarchy
I
boogaloo.
told you got to keep track. You got Henry's.
Henry II, monarchy boogaloo.
Hank II. Hank Jr. In American parlance, we'd have called him Hank Jr.
So yeah, he's Richard the Petty is trying to overthrow Hank Jr.
No, it'd be like Thomas Beckett. We would have called Tom the Petty.
I was just making a Richard Petty NASCAR joke.
Tom Petty.
Oh yeah. No, I know. I heard it. But Richard Petty is way more.
Wow, really bringing it down.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying. So
one time, I'm sorry. We're gonna talk about NASCAR for a quick second. In
oh
the middle
God,
of this
please, can we not?
just quick one. I want to talk about somebody that I hate a lot. One time, my ex-wife and I went to her dad's like 11th wife or some shit's house.
No, that's
not 11th.
That's
probably
not
it's like fourth.
I was
it's
gonna
like
say
fourth
that's
or
not
some
accurate.
shit. But like, God, this bitch is terrible. But she was awful, sure. But she had this son who was like this awful, sleazy, like false preacher guy. That was like you could just smell the fucking slime coming off this guy.
Like
but
he was like one of these.
He was like a youth pastor that slicked his hair, and
gross.
he was well on the way to like fucking like he's well on the way to becoming like a really bad megachurch asshole. I hope he's dead.
Probably hung out at like high schools and trying to get all the girls to come to youth groups.
He's literally dating a girl from one of the youth groups. But he was there, and they were all watching. They're all watching the Daytona 500 in Daytona, which is great. And
they were at home in Daytona watching the Daytona 500.
You could hear the fucking cars outside. But like Petty was doing well, and at any time anyone mentions Richard Petty, I always think like this guy, because this fucking like 21-year-old sleazeball.
That
like,
story immediately.
He'd like clap his hands, be like, "Oh, Petty's getting them," and then and so that happened, be like, "Oh, my father, that was good."
Oh God!
And just I fucking sat there and just and I realized I needed to get a divorce 4 years later.
Just slide the shotgun fucking muzzle into your mouth slowly and just stare at him across the room.
You know how when you think about people that you just fucking hate, like a couple of them float to the top? I haven't seen that. Yeah. I haven't seen that guy in 15 years.
People who just make such a terrible impression upon you that
I met that guy
you
once.
Can't not think about them.
I met him
forever
once
and ever
15 years ago.
Yeah, no, I believe
the
it.
rest of my life. Anyway,
I believe it 100%.
I just wanted to take this time to say fuck that guy, and if anyone knows him, just go on, go tell him. So
Richard joined Louis VII of France and his older brother in rebelling against their father to try and take all of his territory. Right? Hey, Dad, fuck you. That's a real hey, Dad, fuck you.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it's not like taking the car when he didn't say okay.
Take your fucking kingdom.
Fuck you, Dad. So he also joined.
You go to your room.
He also joined the Third Crusade to try and take back control of Jerusalem when the Sultan of Egypt took over. It's a whole big thing. You know what? We're not going to go into the Sultan of Egypt. Let's just keep him out of this. But he spent most of his 10-year reign completely outside of England. He was crusading for most, which, by the way, is covered in all the Robin Hood stories. He's always off to the Crusades. He was imprisoned at one point by the Holy Roman Emperor, which is not the same as the Pope. Right. When I first started seeing it, I was like, Holy Roman Emperor, that's the Pope,
different
right?
guy, yeah.
Different dude. That was when there was a Holy Roman Empire. It's basically what's left over from the Roman Empire. It's basically what used to be called Caesar is now the Holy Roman Emperor. So he had to pay a big ass ransom for his release. At the time,
Yeah,
right?
Robin Hood went over there and saved the day. I saw that movie. Kevin Costner.
So his older brother had already died. Richard was second in line of succession, right? So he's trying to get back from Jerusalem back to England.
Anybody
So-
who wants a clearer picture of this particular succession, watch the movie The Lion in Winter with Peter O'Toole.
Oh, okay.
That's a great movie.
Wonderful.
Have you ever seen that one?
I haven't.
Fucking great movie.
Why would it ever surprise you that I haven't seen
Anthony
it?
Hopkins' first movie.
Oh, interesting.
We should watch that together. We can cuddle.
I'll cuddle. So he's trying. So
like the
he's
bear
trying
in
to
winter.
he's trying to get back to England to take the throne, right? So he ends up making a half-assed treaty with the Sultan of Egypt to not. He never takes back Jerusalem, right? After all this money and all this time spent over there, better part of 10 years, and he hightails it back. Gets caught by the Holy Roman Emperor. Gets imprisoned, gets ransomed. One of his boys comes and pays the ransom. He hauls ass back. While this is all going down, his brother John, who had been in the Holy Land with him, hightailed it out and returned to England, defected to France and plotted to take over Richard's land
Yeah.
before Richard got back. He was like, "I'm gonna get this shit." Right?
Fairly well displayed in most Robin Hood stories.
Right. So after his return to England, Richard, waged war against Philip II of France, who his brother John was allied with, and got most of his territory back because they started working up France and just taking shit. Got most of his territory back. He ended up dying of wounds in battle. He ended up naming John his successor before he died anyway. But dude, the deep dive is insane. The whole story with Henry II, his dad, Eleanor, who's his mom. Also, after she left Henry II, ended up marrying Louis the Louis VII,
Whoa.
the King of France. So he had some other half siblings.
Eleanor of Aquitaine.
There were like during the whole Holy Roman shit, him being detained there. There were like cousins and shit in Italy and in Cyprus. It's fucking crazy. The deep dive just on Richard is insane. And I was like, I think it was around this point of doing my show notes that I was like, I have to change. Like I have to figure out a new sort of tact here. I have to go at it differently because this is where it started to get so deep that I was like, I'll get lost in here and not be able to find my way back.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. You'd be down the rabbit hole, and then you're just talking about Richard
I'll be in
II
the middle
or
of the
Henry
fucking-
II for fucking ever.
I'll be in the middle of the labyrinth and all out of my I've spooled out my thread. It's all gone. So John, his brother, who originally tried to take his lands before he could get back and assume the throne, ends up being his successor.
Recruits the sheriff of Nottingham. Band of merry men, obviously, liberate the land and put
Totally.
Richard the Lionheart back in his rightful place.
Yeah, exactly. So he reigned from 1199 AD to 1216 AD, 17-year reign. He died at 49, right? He had some pretty significant challenges, including the loss of Normandy. Now, Normandy has been part of the what we could call the English Empire
The fiefdom.
at this point. Yeah, fiefdom is a great word for it. So Normandy's been part of this for a while now,
Right, so
and he lost Normandy.
The English Empire at this point is kind of just like coastal. It's like the islands and then like coastal France.
Top of France.
Yeah.
Effectively just the top of France. So which by the way, we're going to start losing a lot of that real quick here in a second. So he lost Normandy. He lost most of his French lands to Philip II. There were a ton of financial struggles at home because all of these battles were just costing a ton of fucking money, right? So there were conflicts with the barons in England and with the church, and because basically you fund all these military campaigns through taxation, and so there were just all these crazy taxes. And again, this is still consistent through like multiple kings. This crazy taxation because we're constantly in Scotland, in France, battling bullshit at home because my brother or my cousin or my whatever thinks that they should be on the throne. There is just this constant
Overt
battle.
taxation to fund endless war? Never heard of it.
No shit, right? But But obviously that led to, you know, a lot of resentment and distrust among all of his little barons there, which is why a lot of these skirmishes broke out in England proper, in addition to having troops out in Scotland, troops down in France on multiple different fronts, skirmishes up in Ireland, in Wales. There's all this shit just constantly happening.
What you just said made me picture people fighting inside of a whale.
So stupid. Sometimes we're not that funny. That's all. Full stop.
I can make up for that. Hold on. So we talked about like how the French laugh at one of our episodes, and now I'd like to do a small segment on how the British royal family laughs and how you can tell the difference between one of them is laughing and when one is shocked.
Okay.
All right. Here's a Brit royal laughing. Ready?
Okay.
All right, and here's when one's shocked. It's almost the same, but check the difference.
You totally made up for the terrible whale joke. You made everyone forget it.
Yeah,
with
you
a
brought it right
new
back.
Terrible joke.
That's a good. I do that all the time. But usually I just say fat man.
Stupid.
Bully.
So listen here, buddy. So in 1215, the barons forced John to agree to the Magna Carta, right?
That's a good one.
That was designed to define and limit royal power, right? However, it didn't last long because John attempted to annul the Magna Carta, which led to the First Barons' War, which was still ongoing when he died suddenly in 1216.
Magna Carta, also a Lil Wayne album. It's Mag the Carter.
Stop. So that was basically the end of the Angevin kings. Now we get to the House of Plantagenet. Plantagenet? Plantagenet. So
I'd say Plantagenet.
Plantagenet?
No, that sounds more like a vegetable.
Plantagenet.
Plantagenet.
It's Plantagenet.
Plantagenet.
You got to say it like you're from England.
Say it like some British dork.
Pronounce it phonetically.
Plantagenet.
Oh, hello. I'm from the House of Plantagenet.
House of Plantagenet.
Henry III, House of Plantagenet.
Oh, such a
Please bow in my presence. Thank you.
Follow the girl and report back at midnight.
So yeah, Henry III, who was Johnny Boy's son here, his reign went from 1216 AD to 1272 AD. Right, he reigned for 56.
Fucking pretty good one.
56 years. Right, he reigned for 56 years. He died at 65, which means he ascended to the throne at 9 years old.
Dang. Was that the youngest king ever ascended?
No, we will talk about the youngest
At
king,
the
though.
time?
At the time it was. Yes, at the time it was. So
I could just picture just everybody being like, he's fucking 9 years old. Are we serious? Are we really going to do this?
Well, so what happened was because John, his father, was constantly out trying to reclaim these lost lands in France, he was, leading troops in battle frequently. He died suddenly when he contracted dysentery.
Ah.
Yeah, he was out afield. He was afield doing his military thing and got dysentery.
And pooped himself to death.
And back then, there's nobody
goes,
running, no ambulance picking you up and giving you an IV, baby. You shit yourself and vomit yourself in the middle of a field till you die.
I am taken aback sometimes by the things that we aren't worried about anymore. There was
Shitting
a time,
yourself to death.
There was a time when I just went camping, and now I'm going to shit until I die.
Literally,
there it goes.
I will shit
and it's
myself
just
to death.
It's going to take 6 weeks, but the realization sets in about 30 minutes that you're like, either this stops in an hour, or I'm going to die.
I'm dead in a matter of days. So because his father, King John, spent so much of his time trying to regain all this lost land in France and fighting all these barons at home during the Barons' War, he obviously inherited sort of all these issues, right? Because he was only 9 years old, obviously he had what do they call them? Sort of royal I can't remember the name. Oh, we'll hit it here in a second. He had sort of, people running the show for him, right?
Right.
But of course, because he was so young, that kind of advanced this concept that kings needed to be bound by law.
Consorts?
No, not concerts. I can't remember.
Go monkeys.
Yeah, basically. So
These are my royal monkeys. Go fetch, monkey.
but
Mama. I want a gold cloak. Fetch me my gold, monkey. Yes, sir. Yes.
Jesus goddamn fuck Christ.
Oh, yes, Your Majesty.
I'm waiting for 2 seconds of silence for editing purposes.
Why can't they pay more gold, Mumsy? Cut their hands off, all of them.
Oh my god. I want to see the man fly. Throw him from the parapets, Mama. I want to see the bad man fly.
You heard your king.
No, because he was so young, that sort of advanced this whole concept that, you got to be bound by law. And, so during his time of king, that gained a lot of traction. His time, especially when he was younger, was sort of the development of the English Parliament, which then sort of was given the power to grant taxes, which was a big thing after the previous three kings were doing all this crazy taxation to fund all these battles and stuff. So all these things kind of tied in together. So in exchange for funding military campaigns in France, Parliament gained all these concessions from the king, right? Okay, fine. You want us to fund this. We're in charge of doing it.
It's kind of a give and take as well, because obviously the reigning monarch would want to keep whoever's in Parliament in his favor.
Sure.
If that's the only force in the nation that can curtail his own power.
Yeah.
So,
for sure. So Henry was, another thing that was pretty unpopular about him was that he was influenced by foreign favorites. So there's this concept back then of favorites, right? So of all the sort of barons and noblemen and all this stuff that were part of a king's council, they would have favorites, which are sort of these people that were really the inner circle, right? And we'll get into some real fucked up favorites here as we go down.
Pandering, smarmy little dickholes that would do anything for the favor of the court. Yeah.
Oh yeah, there's going to be one in particular that we talk about at length.
Watch any single historical drama in which there is a court and there's always this, oh yes, my lord.
Yeah. And then goes and like just starts shit with everybody else to sort of, just because he's got favor with the king.
We must remove Lady Elaine from the king's favor.
Exactly. So there was a lot of concern because there were a lot of foreign favorites.
I think I just referenced Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, actually. Lady Elaine.
Yeah, that is a good one. So, because of all these power struggles,
I'm not going to be able to get that out of my head. I'm sorry.
It's just the worst.
The infighting,
this is the worst episode.
The pandering, infighting in the magic castle.
Do you know how much work I did to get this? You're just derailing the whole thing. I'm kidding.
You want to just talk into a tape recorder and then, like fucking superimpose some giggles over it? Jesus.
Just whenever I would just a laugh track. That's the laugh track.
Yay.
So because of all these struggles and resentments and stuff like that, because of all this shit going on, there was a pretty widespread consensus after a while that Henry was just unfit to rule. He also spent so much of his reign like attempting to win back this French territory that his dad had lost. So that was, another big thing. Eventually in 1258, he was forced to comply with the provisions of Oxford, which... I'm sorry, I just wanted to take a beat after the provisions of Oxford.
Provisions of Oxford.
You must sign the provisions of Oxford, Henry. You must do it. I implore you, my lord.
When you're doing a British accent, you get all these different variances, and my favorite by far is the bored one. You must sign the provisions of Oxford, and
the sort of what's his name?
Asleep.
What's his name that played Snape?
You put me on the spot.
I know. I know it most of the time. I can't think of it right now.
Hans Gruber.
No.
Alan Rickman.
Yes, Alan Rickman.
Alan Rickman.
King Henry, you must sign the provisions of Oxford, please.
I always go with the Hans Gruber from Die Hard. No, you're one of them. Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker.
Jesus Christ.
That's a fucking good Rickman.
It's a great one.
We're good at this.
No, we're not, but that's okay. So the provisions of Oxford basically transferred a lot of the royal power to a council of barons, right? So now we've got a whole council of barons doing, making power moves. Which, again, recurring theme, Henry, after a little while, attempted to overturn the provisions, and that led to the Second Barons' War. Now we're too deep, baby.
Saw that one coming.
Barons' War 2. Can't wait for the sequel. That ended up actually working out. The King Henry won it, and he restored royal authority, which is basically I can do whatever I want. His reign was sort of marked by like just stupid extravagant spending on royal palaces. He spent a bunch of money on Westminster Abbey. There was just a lot of spending at the expense of everyone who he taxed: the church, the royals, the nobles.
It is so often the case with any powerful nation that the more wondrous the buildings and sites, the more horrible the period in which they were built.
Right,
yeah.
no shit. So when he died in his 60s, what did we say? He was about 65. Yeah, his son Edward I took over from 1272 to 1307. Reigned for 35 years. When he died, he was 68 years old. So Edward initiated a bunch of reforms through parliamentary statute. He summoned the model parliament in 1295, which was a really good parliament, apparently. The model for parliament, if you will. But yeah, he convinced parliament to finance military campaigns in Wales and in Scotland.
Jesus.
What's up?
Oh, just the Second Barons' War, led by this guy de Montfort.
Yeah, we're not getting into that idiot.
I know, but part of his strategy in this war was he took advantage of rising anti-Semitism.
We're about to get into that too.
Yeah, reading essentially like a crystal knocked of ancient England. Like fucking Jesus Christ.
There's some of that coming, baby. So
he incited rebellion by calling for the cancellation of debts owed to Jews. that's fucking European playbook.
Mm-hmm. Well, so get ready because Edward the First, who we're talking about, is getting ready to be balls deep in all that, right? Mm. So he permanently conquered Wales. After this, Wales is no longer a back and forth. He enforced English domination with the Statute of Wales. And he also tried to intervene in the Scottish succession, and that led to there was a succession dispute in Scotland, and he tried to intervene in that, and that led to the First War of Scottish Independence, right? So at 68,
war.
Oh, it won't stop. It won't.
They're
stop.
in war for the next 150 years.
Don't wait for it to stop because it's not going to happen in this episode. I guarantee it. So there's a brief pause. I'll give you that much of a spoiler. So hey, just like old Granddaddy John, Edward died of dysentery.
Damn.
At 68.
All the power in the world.
He was on his way to invade Scotland. Got dysentery.
Ate a bad fig.
Just sprayed ass until he was empty. Until he was just an empty sack of bones.
Can you imagine being on the road with the king? Like, we're going to go conquer. And the king just keeps shitting. And everyone's standing around like, oh, he's been shitting.
And he's wearing a suit of armor. And the bathing practices back then.
Gross, the whole army's got to stop every 45 feet so the king can shit again. And even in the back, people are like, "Boy, that's dysentery. That is.
It's disgusting, isn't it? He's right.
Shit himself.
He's a right problem over there. We're not going to be able to do shite." So, Jesus Christ, where the fuck was I? So. There's a lot we can talk about in terms of Edward I just being a gaping dickhole.
Like Johnny Knoxville.
Oh yeah, see our
Throwback.
see our movie mishaps episode for that
Throwback.
reference.
Hole in a bucket.
Basically, all these dudes were going on crusade. There was a lot of back and forth crusades: the third crusade, the fifth crusade, the sixth crusade, the ninth crusade. It's just nonstop fucking crusades. Like you would think after a while, it's like, hey, maybe let's just let them have it.
Quit crusading.
Just let them have it, right? So, and they were taxing the shit out of the noblemen and out of the church in order to justify the cost of marching all these armies all over Europe. And by the way, to go to Jerusalem across Europe.
Yeah,
You know
that's
what I mean?
that's a tough ride.
It's a long road,
Yeah.
baby. So, and then of course, then they'd fight the noblemen, and then they'd build some castles, and then the church would get involved, and then they'd go fuck a cousin or two, and then they'd loot some land in France, and then they'd fucking die. That's basically the story of all these
It's
guys.
the ebb and flow of the royal
It
family.
really is. But so there is one thing about old Eddie the First here that he. So you mentioned the Jewish thing, right?
Yeah.
So at the time, there was this whole thing with like Jews in England were allowed to charge interest on loans, right? It was called usury.
Yeah, it's called usury.
Right, usury. Yeah, what's what they called it back then. Now we just call it fucking interest. But
Yeah.
So Edward faced pressure from the Catholic Church because they were basically intolerant of Judaism and usury, right? Because English money lenders couldn't charge usury. They couldn't charge interest if they lent money, right?
And this is a time in which the Catholic Church is just
In
blowing
charge of
up
everything.
with
In
power.
charge of
Yeah,
everything.
Fucking,
In charge of everything.
they don't want anything but Catholics.
Right. So, so the Jews being, well, any citizen being the king's personal property, effectively, he was free to just tax them at will. So the Jews were overtaxed to hell, and they were forced to sell a lot of their debt bonds at like way less than what they actually even borrowed the money for or lent the money for.
Yeah, so they're selling at a loss. To
Yeah,
the
100%. And effectively they were just exploited by.
So the everyone's like, I don't want to owe money to the Jews, so they're like, we'll take care of this, and they just took the debt, and they're like, now you owe us, motherfuckers.
He issued something called the Statute of Jewry, not jewelry, Jewry, Jewry, which outlawed laws with interest and encouraged. We're going to put encouraged in quotations. Encouraged the Jews to take up other professions.
Wow.
He also organized the arrest of all of the heads of Jewish households in England.
Goddamn.
So
Sounds very familiar.
about a tenth of the Jewish population in England, about 300 people, were executed.
Sounds very familiar.
Others were allowed to pay fines to not be executed, I'm guessing.
Jesus Christ.
They raised about £16,000 through fines and the seizure of property of the dead.
Fuck.
Hey, we
so they
executed you.
executed you. Now we get to
Now
take
we-
your shit.
Now your shit's ours, dude. It's
then,
the property
then we're
of the
also
king.
gonna melt your fucking gold teeth down.
It's
Jesus
the king's-
Christ, England.
It's the king's property.
You know, I never heard this one, England.
He also ordered all the Jews to attend special sermons preached by, Catholic Dominican friars and persuading them to convert. Obviously that didn't really
Didn't
hold. Yeah, it didn't take. But yeah, so by like 1280, they had been exploited so badly that they just they were no longer even a financial asset to the crown, and that was it. There was one particular pretty bad attack on the Jewish the Jewish citizenry at the time. Where there was an edict of expulsion in 1290 where Edward formally expelled all the Jews from England.
Whoa.
Yeah, and as
Take your cloven hoofs and your horns and get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, so it's unsurprisingly, as they crossed the Channel to France, a lot of pirates were laying in wait. A lot of them died in storms. A lot of them got swept up in currents and washed out to sea. Yeah,
This is the 1300s?
This is 1290, so just before the 1300s.
Jesus. Fuck.
So yeah, it was, and then of course after that they secured all of their property and sold it off, and
It's settled in Germany.
so in France, I would say primarily at this point. But,
the Eastern.
Germany's right there.
Eastern motion.
It's not that far to get there.
Well, the ones in France and shit happened too.
Yeah. So what's funny is
Sorry, Jews.
So
Fuck.
Edward I claimed the expulsion was done, quote, in honor of the crucified, and blamed the Jews for their treachery and criminality.
In honor of the crucified. Mm-hmm. That was a Jew.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, dude. It's pretty piece of shit type dude, Eddie.
Yeah,
Eddie
fuck
West.
that guy.
Yeah, it doesn't get much better.
No. It's going to get worse. Essentially, I think we're going to hold it for part 2. But when we get to Africa, things do not go particularly well.
I know. We haven't even found the Americas yet. We're still in the early 1300s. So.
Yeah, it's still 300 years until fucking it was dicking around over there.
So during the reign of Edward II, so clearly Edward I's son, he was 1307 to 1327. 20 years. He died at 43.
Of dysentery?
He did not die of dysentery. Worse, by the way. So, you fucking asshole. Never do that again. Smash your computer to pieces.
It's a Chromebook. It looks like worth like $40.
So obviously Edward II was left with this big war in Scotland. There were also conflicts between the king and the nobility, and this was again due to royal favorites. Now this is where we get, remember the people that are like super in the king's inner circle. Right? Yeah,
pandering fuckheads, I believe I called them.
Yeah. So the king refused to adhere to the ordinances of 1311. I'm gonna rush through this, and then we're gonna come back. I'm gonna distill all of this.
You must adhere.
Yeah, I'm gonna distill all of this in a moment, but let me get through these couple sentences. Right, he wouldn't adhere to the ordinances of 1311, which were aimed to limit the monarch's power. So another one of these situations where the lords and the clergy attempted to rein in the monarchy's power. Right, that led to tensions and a big series of events, including exile and eventual execution of the king's favorite, Piers Gaveston, and later the rise of Hugh Despenser the Younger, who further destabilized the kingdom. And in the midst of all this shit, Edward's wife, Isabella, formed an alliance with a guy named Roger Mortimer, who was exiled to France, and that led to Edward's capture and subsequent abdication in 1324, marking the first formal deposition of an English monarch. First time ever.
Oh, first time like the monarch formal. Was put on trial.
No, the first time he was just forced to.
Oh, get the fuck out of this chair, asshole.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So to distill all this real quick, all right. So Piers Gaveston was maybe Edward II's gay lover.
I'm gonna say definitely.
Well, I'm gonna keep going because it gets real juicy.
This is my friend Piers Galveston. Oh, charmed.
Edward, I love the way you swish across the room.
Oh, Piers, my passions.
My loins are a quiver when I see you.
My heart screams Galveston.
So the first time the king's forced to exile him, he gets exiled to Ireland because he was a pretty arrogant guy who was just always provoking shit, effectively, right? A year later, Edward negotiated his return. By the way, this wasn't even his first exile. So Edward I's dad, right? Edward II's dad, didn't like his son's affinity, quote unquote, for Piers.
Oh, for buggery.
Yeah, and sent him away. And then died a few months later, and then Edward II.
Oh, Edward the First. Is that Edward the Longshanks?
Edward is the one that did the statute of Jewry.
Hold on a goddamn second.
So while you click clack, I am going to continue.
Edward the Longshanks.
No.
This is the bastard fuckhead king.
That's Edward the First. I told you we could go forever on how much of a piece of shit he was.
But this whole the whole
we could do a whole episode on what a piece of shit that guy
whole affinity for Piers and all this is all covered in the movie Braveheart.
Oh Jesus.
Yeah. which is just one of. I'm sorry, it's just that is actually like my favorite movie.
Really?
Yeah, Braveheart followed closely by like Master and Commander.
Okay.
Braveheart fucking rules. I know Mel Gibson's a piece of shit. Right?
Well, yeah.
Movie's fucking awesome. But there's a whole bit where fucking obviously like, you know, in a fantastical sense, Edward of the Longshanks throws Piers out of a fucking tower window.
Oh Jesus, that didn't actually happen.
No, it didn't. But yeah, it's good dramatic effect.
So while Edward I was alive, he didn't like his son's affinity for Piers, so he had him sent off.
Piers's penis.
Not really, yeah. Not really sure where he went the first time, but again, Edward died a couple months later.
Take me, Piers.
Edward died a few months later. So Edward II ascends to the throne, brings Piers back, right? So some time goes by, again, back to, you know, him just being a fucking arrogant prick who was always provoking shit with the other nobles. They got together and they negotiated, or they sort of forced him to exile Piers to Ireland, right? A year later, so this is the second one, Edward negotiates him coming to return. Okay? So,
My most loyal subject.
Piers comes back from Ireland, and evidently his behavior was even more offensive. So, during that time, the ordinances of 1311 had been signed, and so the Lord Ordainers booted him again, and this time said, "If you come back, we're going to execute you. If you come back, we're gonna hunt you down. We're gonna charge you with criminality, buggery, probably, and you're done." So Piers returned and was executed. That's the end of the story for Piers, right?
Just could not resist those royal cheeks.
Now back to Hugh Despenser the Younger, right? After Edward, Jesus Christ. So Hugh Despenser and Edward II teamed up after Edward's cousin, Thomas of Lancaster, executed Piers Gaveston, right? Mm-hmm. Edward II's cousin was the one who killed him, right? Okay. So this Hugh Despenser was like, oh, I don't like Thomas of Lancaster because he seized all of my family's land and demanded that you exile them, right? So Thomas of Lancaster was like, we took all their land, tell them to get the fuck out. This is all sort of rumbling factions of kingdom here.
So this is when shit's getting real Game of Thrones-y in England.
Right. So
this is before you get to your fucking like Richard III's and shit, when things get really like climactically intense. But this is like good early bubblings of like all this shit. Yeah.
So rather than exile them, King Edward basically teamed up with Hugh Despenser the Younger, right? I know.
Stupid fucking
name.
It
really is such a dumb name. And they led a military campaign to capture and execute Lancaster. His cousin, by the way.
Oh, damn.
His cousin, right? They captured him and executed him, right? That sort of, that team that they built together sort of strengthened the king's power, and they kept going and like taking back lands that had been, basically anybody who didn't support the king was getting sieged, getting their castles, getting their lands taken, giving it to the people who supported the king. Mm-hmm. So after that, Edward revoked the ordinances of 1311 and basically just started executing enemies, confiscating their estates. And at this point, everybody hates the king. And by the way, his wife Isabella hates them both. So Edward's wife goes to France to negotiate a peace treaty on a whole different skirmish with the French, right? Because there's French shit still going on over there.
Right.
Instead, Isabella, who's had enough of Edward II shit, comes back with an exiled baron, Roger Mortimer, who I mentioned earlier. Mm-hmm. They come back with a small army and collapse Edward's regime. He flees to Wales and eventually is captured and forced to relinquish the crown to Edward III, his son. And he died a few months later in Gloucestershire.
Gloucester.
Yeah, Gloucestershire, right? By the way,
in Massachusetts, it'd be Gloucester.
Gloucester, is that it? It probably is.
But it'd be like Gloucestershire.
By the way, he was probably murdered by the new regime, aka his child. And also, you might be wondering what happened to Hugh Despenser after all this, amid this little fracas going on.
What did happen to Hugh Despenser?
Well, I'll tell you, Riley. He was arrested, hanged, drawn and quartered that same year that Edward II was killed. And he also had his penis severed and burned as punishment for sodomy and maybe heresy. So...
he had his penis burned?
His
Just like
penis
Channing Tatum.
severed.
Oh, okay.
Cut off and burned.
They
Said, Lop, watch this, put it in a frying pan, and said, this is for being a sodomite and a heretic. Then hanged him, drew and quartered him.
That's a good one.
A not great end.
No, that's no fun.
A not very great end. Just FYI, there is another Dan Carlin about medieval torture type shit. I can't remember the name of
one
that.
is that? That's
It's
that's
like
some dark
something
shit, though, yeah.
entertainment.
Yeah,
Dark
violent entertainment or something like that,
something like that. Yeah. And he goes over frequently back in these days, people weren't hanged till death. They were hanged and just hung there. They didn't drop and their neck broke.
No,
They dropped and hung there, and then they'd lift them up right before they died. Once they'd pass out, they'd lift them back up, sometimes hang them 3-4 times. So he probably wasn't dead, just FYI. He was hanged, drawn, and quartered. He wasn't dead, I can almost guarantee, when they drew and quartered. What's the point of drawing and quartering a dead guy?
Yeah, you want to... if you guys aren't familiar with drawing and quartering, it's when all your extremities are attached to horses or, what other... some sort of a pulley object, sometimes
all
mechanical.
Pointed in separate directions.
Different directions, and then it would be, you'd be pulled with the tension until your limbs and ligaments all popped, and oftentimes they would slice you in the belly to give like a nice like starting hole, and then your body would be ripped apart.
Yeah. It's pretty brutal shit.
Yeah, medieval shit was intense.
So
you're either shitting yourself to death or you're getting pulled apart by horses.
In a field
They're
somewhere
your
in Scotland.
dick off
just
and cooking it up like a sausage.
Shitting your brains out in a field in Scotland. So
You
that
get a fucking hangnail and then you just get gangrene and die.
So that moves us on to Edward III. Right?
Okay.
So
Eddie III, we call him.
Yeah. Eddie Trace. So he ruled from 1327 to 1377. It was 50 years. He died at 64. Again, meaning he succeeded his father at 14 years old. Surprise, surprise, his mother Isabella, who, remember that guy, Roger Mortimer, that she came back with?
Yep.
Hey, they're shacked up now. They are married and fucking.
According to Braveheart, Edward III would have been William Wallace's son.
Okay.
Because Edward II was a poncy little poofter.
Well,
and
I believe Edward III was...
no, that movie's not historically accurate, but
okay.
that was the supposition made in the movie.
So he was Isabella and Edward II's child. Isabella's now with Roger Mortimer. They ruled the country because he succeeded at 14. However, in 1330, so 3 years after he took the throne, 17-year-old Edward staged a coup and took over the government, executed Mortimer in the process.
Goddamn.
Yeah, just fucking brutal, man. That's something about that throne, baby.
Was this Black Prince Edward?
Yeah, in 1340, he claimed the French throne on the grounds that he was the last male descendant of his grandfather, Philip IV of France, right? So he said, whoever's over there, I'm the king.
Right.
Philip IV was my grandfather, and
I
I am
his
the last...
mother was descended from the French court. Yeah.
Yes, and I am the last remaining descendant of his. I should be the one who got this in succession. That was the start of the 100 Years' War.
That's a long war.
It is.
Did not last 100 years.
It didn't last 100 years, but it lasted... Well, there were several phases, so it was like war, little bit of peace, war again, little bit of peace, war again. I think there were 3 phases. But Edward was militarily successful. He won back a lot of the French territories.
Shit, 100 Years' War lasted for approximately 116 years.
Oh shit, really?
I was thinking of something else. Was it the 7 Years' War maybe? Or
Maybe. Well, again, it was like war, peace, war, peace, war, peace. It was very Leo Tolstoy at the time.
Yeah.
So
that was a good joke. I like that one.
Yeah, thank you.
No, it was good.
So toward the end of his reign, he sort of lost a little bit of that flair. He lost Aquitaine, which was a big part of the northern part of France that the British had held for a very long time.
Sounds like an artificial sweetener.
The Good Parliament of 1376, which was not the model parliament, but it was good. They highlighted corruption in the government, and that led to the first impeachment of ministers and the removal of Alice Perrers. We're going to talk about Alice in a second. She was the royal mistress. And
The royal mistress.
and but overall, Edward III's reign strengthened Parliament quite a bit. Some of the things that happened during his reign, but
Possibly that 100 years of warfare.
yeah. So that whole thing is pretty succinct. I'll distill a little bit of it. So notably, Edward III ruled during the Black Plague. So it makes it a lot easier to rule when you lose like 50% of your population.
That's a rough one.
Alice Paris, who I just mentioned, was one of Queen Philippa's household ladies, turned lover to the king.
Ooh.
So Philippa was Edward III's wife, right? So Alice Paris was one of her ladies, and then, she was probably like 22, 23, and he was like 52, 53, so it's a little bit of an age gap there, but it seems like she was a pretty smart lady. So her husband died, and she started stooping the king, who was still married at the time, right? And she had, outside of like her duties in the royal household, she did have a money lending business. So she was probably a little bit business minded. But she accepted gifts from courtiers. That's what I was talking. That's the word I was looking for earlier.
Courtier,
not
courtesans,
courtesans,
they're
or not
the court.
Yeah,
Courtiers.
Yeah. So she accepted gifts from courtiers.
Courtiers.
Yeah. Who were, courtiers, other people wishing to just get kind of like influence.
The avarice-laden, teeth-sucking pigs following around the royals and just begging for their leftovers.
Right, trying to get some influence with the king, obviously, right?
I'm just going to try and keep thinking of like just smarmy, namby, pale,
right.
maked up, white powder wig, fucking just.
So this is fun. The king also gave her gifts in the form of land and manors and jewels and penis. A whole bunch of these were in 1371 following the death of Philippa. So she died, and he was like, here you go, have all of her land and manors.
I got some stuff
whatnot.
for you over here.
I got things.
Would you like to be elevated in court?
So in a pretty smart move, she tied all these up in something called fefment. Fefment. It basically means it's like a total relinquishment of ownership rather than just a gift from the king that I can take back if you piss me off. It's like now there are documents and stuff that say that you are relinquishing the ownership. It now belongs to
Oh, that's clever.
to Alice Paris, right?
That's clever.
So she was a pretty smart lady.
The king gives you a gift, and you're like, "Oh, that's so generous.
It's mine now,
Let
right?
Me,
Can you
let
sign
me draw
this?
up some papers."
My lawyer's on the way, and some guy in robes and a briefcase walks in.
Oh, my king! After last night, that was so sweet.
Right? No shit.
Can I get your signature right here, saying that you meant it when you gave it to me, please?
So anyway, the fefment basically says that it can't later be reabsorbed by the crown, right? However,
that made it sound like the crown was
just
like absorbed
by the crown. The Parliament of 1376, the good Parliament of 1376, also accused her of taking like £2,000 to £3,000 a year out of the royal treasury. They were like, these numbers don't add up. These numbers ain't numbering. And
she's like, well, that wasn't in the fefment, so
yeah, right. So, but joke's on her, because as the king's health began to decline, the Parliament convinced King Edward III to banish her. He was
not very funkadelic of them.
He was so on his deathbed that he really had to acquiesce. There was nothing much he could do.
He's like, I don't give a shit. Fine.
But she did manage to launch a comeback. She stayed within his inner circle until he died in a year later in 1377. And then the next year, 1378, she was put on trial, found guilty, sentenced to exile, not death. But her properties were all forfeited to the crown.
Damn, so much for fefment.
Yeah, right. No shit.
Damn.
So
greedy. I'll bet you she was innocent.
I don't know.
I bet she didn't take shit, and they were just like, no, you can't have this stuff.
Thought
you were clever with this fefment.
Yeah, right.
No, you can't have this shit.
King Edward was just so love besotten that he was like, just take it all, please. Just keep sucking. Take it. Just keep on sucking, Alice.
I'll sign whatever you want.
But he's just getting a blowjob and signing just a stack of papers. Like, here's a manor, here's some land. Here's this one's in Scotland. This one's in France. This one's. You need a summer home in Wales. What do you want, please? Please don't stop. So that brings us to Richard II. By the way, Edward III outlived his son, And so Richard II is actually his grandson.
Oh shit.
Yeah. So we skipped right over. His son only had.
God, that's gotta be fucking. That's gotta be a pisser, right?
Yeah, he only had the one son.
And you're
he
dying,
died.
and you're like, fuck, I never got to. Which we thought we were gonna do with we. I'm not me. I'm not one of them. I'm one of those filthy Brits.
Just skip right over Charles.
Yeah,
and
that's
get
what
William.
everyone kind of thought was gonna happen. Yeah.
That Elizabeth was gonna die after Charles died. I mean, maybe
Yeah,
he's
probably.
pretty fucking old. He's definitely not gonna live to 99 like she did. So yeah, Edward didn't die till 64, which is why I think his son died in like his 40s. So Richard II died at 32. He took over he succeeded his grandfather at 10. Right, he was 10 years old when he took the throne. He had a 22-year reign, but the actual power was held by his uncles and his courtiers. Richard actually, there's some things about Richard early on where he seems to be a pretty good king, right? He was pretty young when during there was something called the Peasants' Revolt, right? Which had to do with all the overtaxation for all these battles that were going on, which is still happening. We're talking about 200, 300 years later, right? So during the Peasants' Revolt, Richard was still pretty young, but he kind of convinced all these people that were sort of running things for him that he was ready to assume power. I think he was about 17, 16. See, he was 16. He rode out and met the leaders of the Peasants' Revolt and basically was like, look, what do you guys want? Like tell me what you guys want and I got you, right? And there was some sort of back and forth because they were like, well, why the fuck should we believe you? And then they were kind of broke away and then came back and he was like, hey, you guys are still fighting. Like, I told you I'll do whatever you want. There's some sort of sketchy shit where like I think one or two of the leaders of the Peasants' Revolt got killed by his men after he left.
Right.
But
so I'm not going to pay attention to this, but do as you will.
But for the most part, he is credited with sort of calming down the Peasants' Revolt. Mm-hmm. He's credited with seeking an end to the 100-Year War.
Mm-hmm. I assume he didn't.
He didn't end it. No, it didn't end. I think
looking for an end.
I think he helped one of these little peaceful sort of chapters in the 100-Year War. But
apparently, a great patron of the arts.
He was. He also was a firm believer in royal prerogative, which, if that doesn't translate itself,
I can do whatever the fuck I want.
I am the king.
Yes,
I will do as I please. Right.
It's my prerogative as king.
So yeah, and just like his great grandfather Edward II, he kept a very small group of favorites. Mm-hmm. Right. It
says here he was one of the greatest royal patrons of the arts. He was a patron of Chaucer. Who's a
composer, famous composer.
He ordered the technically innovative cantilevered roof, transforming the Norman Westminster Hall to what it is today. So,
oh boy,
stick that in your fucking cap.
Good for you, Richard Deuce.
Cantilevered roof,
Ricky Deuce, doing it. He did it again.
He did it again.
So in 1399, Henry Bolingbroke, who was the king's cousin, he's Richard II's cousin, led a rebellion that forced Richard to abdicate. On September 30th, a convention parliament declared Richard deposed, and Bolingbroke claimed the vacant throne for himself. Richard II abdicated in favor of his son, not his cousin, right? Mm-hmm. But the end of the end of his reign was so sort of fucking tyrannical.
Richard II?
Yeah. So just as an example,
cantilevered roofs on every home.
So when Richard was coronated, one of the people who was charged with the decision making, remember I said it was uncles and courtiers, one of them was his uncle John of Gaunt, right? When John died, Richard disinherited his son, John's son. When John of Gaunt died, Richard disinherited his son. Do you know what his son was?
Henry IV.
Henry Bolingbroke, right? So Henry was actually already exiled at that point by Richard over some weird duel shit. So somebody said some shit about the king. Henry Bolingbroke took it as some treasonous shit he was saying, challenged him to a duel, and then John Gaunt went to Richard and said, can we just exile him, please, so he doesn't go through with this duel? probably, I'm guessing he was a pussy and he was going to die.
Uh-huh.
So they exiled him away, right, to Ireland. So Richard went off to Ireland. He was fighting. I'm sorry. Henry went off to Ireland and was fighting in Ireland. Richard went off to fight in Ireland after John Gaunt died, and Henry goes, I'm not. You're disinherited. I'm taking all your shit. It belongs to the crown now, right? Royal prerogative, bitch. And so while
you're saying Edward III said that to Henry?
No, we're on Richard II now. We're past Edward III's dead as fuck.
Oh shit! Sorry, where was I? Fucking Richard II, John of Gaunt.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus Christ!
I'm telling you, dude, it's mind-boggling.
I'm just working on this because John of Gaunt marks like as cousin to the king.
Yes, he was Edward III's brother.
Edward III's brother. Okay, so his lineage.
Richard II's cousin. I'm sorry, uncle.
His lineage marks the official start of like the House of Windsor family that the Queen and King, like the contemporary king, is a part of.
Maybe on one end.
This is that branch
this is
of
where
the family
Windsors
tree
end up. Yeah.
Yeah, that branch of the family tree starts going away from the main root, and
Yes.
this is everything after this is a much easier fucking road to hoe.
Well, we still have the House of Lancaster, and we've still got the House of York. We've got a few, but the good thing is we're getting close to the end of this mind fuck of a fucking episode. So that's the good news.
It'll be a lot easier to follow once we get into the atrocities of the modern era. Don't worry.
God. Oh God, I don't like it. So as I said, whenever Richard ascended to the throne, he was 10 years old. So John of Gaunt was one of the uncles that was kind of running shit, right?
Mm-hmm.
Henry Bolingbroke, his son, ends up getting exiled as agreed upon between John of Gaunt and Richard II.
Mm-hmm.
John of Gaunt dies. Richard II says, I'm disinheriting you. You have no lands and no title anymore. And then he leaves to go fight in Ireland. And so while he was away fighting in Ireland, Henry Bolingbroke amassed an army that fought and beat and imprisoned Richard. And Bolingbroke declared himself Henry IV, and Richard died in prison, allegedly of starvation. Whether that was forced or not, we don't know. But basically, when that happened, Parliament accepted Henry Bolingbroke as the new king, and they deliberately broke the line of succession when they deposed Richard,
Right.
And because he had children,
Yeah.
So, but Parliament was like, no, your cousin gets it, dude.
Victory in combat is a particularly strong. That's in like all lineages or all like royal lineages, almost all across the world. It's like. It's either the line keeps going,
right,
or there's a massive military conflict.
Right.
Like those are the two things.
Well, in this case, it was Parliament going, you started off pretty good and you ended up being an absolute fucking tyrant.
Right.
So they wanted to break the line of succession. And, a lot of historians said that created a dangerous precedent and made the crown fundamentally unstable.
Yeah, definitely on the more unstable path. But
right.
I'm sure it was much easier for Parliament to accept that at least they were like blood related.
Yes.
Family. It's not like we're just bringing in some fucking new mook to run shit. Yeah.
Right. It was the son of the last king's brother. So,
Right.
So Bolingbroke became Henry IV, and that starts the House of Lancaster.
The most boring Shakespearean book ever. Fuck.
Yeah, Shakespeare did a lot on these Henrys.
Henry IV kind of like that's like his. Yeah, this era, that's Shakespeare's shit because Shakespeare starts writing 150 years after this. So this is all essentially modern history to him. So he's writing all that shit.
Well, so here's something interesting. Henry IV was the first ruler since the Norman conquest. Remember all the way back when we were back with Aethelstan, right?
Yeah.
Then the Normans took over. Well, first there was that one mook that lasted for 9 months. Then the Normans took over. He's the first ruler since the Norman conquest whose native tongue was English.
Ah.
Yeah. So, but yeah, he had a bunch of challenges.
Who was the first president that was born in America? Was that William Henry Harrison?
No, that was
Martin Van Buren.
Van Buren.
Ah, the little
Van Buren.
magician.
The sly fox.
Yeah.
Throwback to inconsequential presidents, guys.
So Henry IV was a little bit of the little magician of his day.
100%. So yeah, he had a bunch of challenges and rebellions and plots to restore Richard to the throne. Right.
Read the book.
He basically spent his entire 14-year reign defending the throne from Richard's supporters, even after Richard died. Even after Richard died, there were like all these, conspiracies that it was actually some bishop that looked like Richard. It wasn't really Richard. Richard was really alive. And at one point, some of Richard's supporters found a guy that looked like Richard. It was like, yeah, this is him. It's him. He's the king. Fuck this guy. So
to get to just bring it into like kind of like a contemporary leaning, like imagine if like Donald Trump had actually bitten the bullet at the assassination attempts. That's the kind of shit that we'd be dealing with.
Put somebody up there
forever,
that looks just like him. Yeah,
like long
he's
after
really
he's dead, they'll be like, no, he's just lying in wait.
Yeah, he's coming back, guys. After the third day, he's going to push the stone aside and leave the cave.
Conspiracy dickheads have always been around.
It's true. It is true. So, even after Richard's death, his entire 14-year reign was basically entirely defending himself against plots to get him the fuck off the throne and put Richard on.
Goddamn.
His reign was marked by the Welsh Revolt, the Battle of Shrewsbury. Still we had financial difficulties, and there was an Armagnac Burgundian civil war in France.
Armagnac Burgundy is a particularly delicious wine.
That is the northern France. So, so in his final years, his health kind of went to hell. He had, quote, a disfiguring skin disease, and more seriously, suffered acute attacks of grave illness. Historians speculate that he may have had leprosy, and he may have suffered from epilepsy as an older adult. So he had some pretty bad episodes toward the end there, and after the last one, he just didn't wake back up. So we get to his son, Henry V.
Henry V is a particular favorite of mine. I actually have a quote, part of a quote from Shakespeare's Henry V tattooed on me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, is that it?
Oh, I'm just saying. I got part of the fucking the St. Crispin's Day speech from "We few, we happy few, we band of brothers."
Gotcha.
Henry V is fucking cool. There's some cool shit in there, but he's an obstinate dick, dude.
Henry was. We're going to talk about some of the things that kind of that linger because of Henry V, right? So his big thing that he was only king for 9 years. He died at 35. But he really sought to unify England. So he made a bunch of like conciliatory gestures toward his dad's enemies. And also he did a lot to sort of honor Richard II. Mm-hmm. This was a pretty relatively strife-free, domestically at least, time in England. There weren't a lot of like, little bullshit wars happening in there. But he was very focused on like the last phase of the 100 Years' War with France, right? So he had some pretty legendary victories. The Battle of Agincourt.
Agincourt.
Yeah,
Battle of Agincourt is one of the
in,
most legendary battles of all time because it's just crazy one-sided.
So that really boosted national pride, and he just
fucking impossible. They killed like 1,000 Frenchmen.
Yeah,
and like the count on the British side is like 27 people. Like it's ridiculous. And I think that's probably like a wildly kind of inflated estimation brought through Shakespearean. But it's still like, it was like 100 people to 1,000 people, like it was, that kind of shit.
Well, so he also conquered Normandy, got Normandy back, and he was eventually recognized as heir and regent of France in 1420 as part of the Treaty of Troyes, right? Or Troyes, I don't know. Troyes, Troyes.
Do you know what led to his march on France and the Battle of Agincourt?
100 Years of war between France and
but
England.
I mean, but what led to this particular conflict? This is one of my all-time favorite historical contexts.
No, I don't.
So part of like the agreement and the peace at the time between like Normandy and England was that annually they'd pay like the king a duty. You know, so Normandy would ship like gold and shit like duty.
Go ahead.
But they'd like send like gold and shit like that, right? So after his dad dies and Henry ascends the throne, the French send him a case of tennis balls.
My father is dead. I shall ascend to the
I
throne.
shall ascend, and you shall send me an annual duty of gold and ambergris
I
from
will
the
cease
far
to be
isles.
Henry the Swishy of Duke of Wales. And
The swishy. You shall call me
I
King
shall
Harry.
henceforth be known as King Henry V.
But yeah, so they just sent him a bunch of.
I seek to unify England.
The thing they say is they send him tennis balls because tennis was I know it sounds like it's crazy,
Okay.
but like golf and tennis and shit like that, they were all
Yeah,
around at the
sure,
time.
right.
So they sent him a bunch of like just sports balls.
The French did.
Yeah, because they were calling him like a little boy. Like, here's some toys for you, little boy.
Wow.
So his response was to throw a big old fucking tantrum, or as you would call it in England, a moody. And
Oh my God.
he was like, all right, you know what? We're going to take this like paltry force that I can assemble really fast, and we're fucking going.
Yeah.
And he went and he kicked ass.
I mean, yeah, he won that battle. He conquered Normandy back. He was recognized as heir and regent of France, signed a treaty saying such. So he was popular and successful as a king, but reoccurring theme here, baby. Difficulty securing further funds for war in France.
Bummer.
And obviously, I mean, he was basically.
But I'm your king.
He was basically away for most of his 9-year reign. He was pretty unbothered by domestic stuff. Like he was like, I need to lead the battles. So I don't care for these trifles at home.
And the peasants can
We have
handle
a
peasant
war. We
business.
have a war of 100 years. I must win it. So he died in 1422 during a campaign in France. And he left behind now the youngest to ever ascend to the throne, his one and only 9-month-old son, Henry VI.
Holy shit, 9 months.
Yeah. And by the way, well, we'll get into that in 1 second. So yeah, but like I said, he's credited with the rise of English nationalism, which we know nationalism is great, right?
Oh yeah.
It's
Yeah,
a good-
nationalism's that's
equals good
that
times.
shit's a fucking problem.
And actually a lot of people credit him with sort of setting the stage for England to become like, the dominant global power that they still, I mean, better or worse.
I mean, yeah, because
they still are today.
He threw a fucking Moody, and he's like, you know what? If you don't give me what I want, I'll go fucking kill you.
Yeah.
And you set that tone for future monarchs,
Yeah.
and then when your infant son doesn't know you, and you died when he was just a baby, as he grows up, he's like, anybody who fucks with me, I'm gonna take their shit.
Oh, no. Henry VI was not that guy, but we'll get into him in 1 second.
Whatever. He the lineages, legends.
Yeah, right. But as for his death, that's a little complicated. So it appears he contracted dysentery. Oh, fuck. That's not the end of it.
Oh my
That's
god,
not
that
the
just made me
complicated-
laugh so hard I got dizzy.
That's not the complicated part.
it would appear.
It appears he contracted
Fuck me.
dysentery. Shortly. So there was a siege in France, and shortly after that, the king was shitting his life away. But within a couple of weeks, he seemed healthy, right? So there's speculation that at the time he may have also had smallpox. He may have also had the bacterial infection erysipelas.
Sure.
And there's even speculation that he might have had leprosy. But at any rate,
He was just falling apart.
At any rate, so he had this bout of
Get it?
dysentery. I did. I got it.
But
I didn't register right away, but once you said, "Do you get it?" I got it. But yeah, at any rate, a month or so after his little bout of dysentery, he rode into battle in full armor and was suddenly struck with an absolutely debilitating fever, possible heat stroke, maybe even a resurgence of whatever the fuck he had earlier. He lingered for a few weeks. There are some stories about him being like carried around on a litter for a little bit. There's a story about him trying to get on a horse and he was too weak to even get up on his horse. He fell off. Ultimately, he died. And like I said, he left his infant son to take the throne. And that is Henry V. In a very teeny tiny nutshell, because again, with any of these guys, we could do a whole probably 2-parter for each of these people we've covered today.
Mm-hmm. I know the Shakespearean Henry V is a different character than the actual person, because Shakespeare Shakespeare swells with with British pride, shit like that. But like, fuck, that's a good play. I've seen that shit on stage, and that's fucking I've seen Richard III, Henry V. I've seen a bunch of fucking Shakespeare.
I believe it.
But that shit, there's like the speech that he does before the Battle of Agincourt is just one of the best pieces of writing ever done. Yeah.
Well, so now we get to a period of time with sort of some deeper issues between the Duke of York and the Lancastrians, right? Of the Lancaster family, which we've been with for the last 3 kings.
The great pudding battle.
Was there a pudding battle?
Well, yeah, between the Yorkshire.
Oh my God.
And the Lancashire.
Lancastrians.
Yeah.
So stupid. So Henry VI was the one who ascended to the throne at 9 months old.
Real fucking original with these names, I guess.
He had a question mark 49-year reign, so he was king from 1422 to 1461.
49.
Then, well, because he was, like I said, 1422 to 1461. Then he wasn't the king for 9 years. Then he was the king again from 1470 to 1471, 1 year, right?
Jesus.
He died at 49. So he had a 49-year reign question mark, and he died at 49 because he was 9 months old when he became the king.
He's like kind of the king. How long was he not the king?
9 years.
Oh, so that's a 40-year reign.
Yeah,
he had
right?
a 40-year reign.
So he proved to be a weak and incompetent ruler, very much so. By 1453, so keep in mind he's fucking 30 years old at this point. Mm-hmm. So he's doesn't have being a kid to push it off on. He had lost all the French territories except for Calais.
Your father would have been embarrassed.
He did become king in both countries. So Henry V, even though he signed the treaty and was the heir and regent of France, he left whichever Charles was in there. One of the Charleses, I think, and it wasn't Charles.
We're not doing the French lineage.
Yeah, right. But that was his grandfather, and he died 2 months after Henry V died. So Henry VI ascended to the English throne at 9 months and ascended to the French throne at 11 months.
Jesus.
He was the only king to simultaneously be king of 2 countries.
No wonder he was a weak and ineffectual ruler. He was king of 2 countries. Like the first guy to be king of 2 countries.
Well, what's funny is that when he ascended to both thrones, the English holdings in France were the most they had been since the Angevins, right?
Right.
Way back, right? Once he assumed control of the throne, he started losing immediately.
I wonder why. Maybe because he was a baby.
So following the French conquest of Gascony,
I just got this picture of a baby like wearing like a robe with a crown on it.
The red robe and the red crown and holding a scepter.
And somebody rushing in like, "My lord, we're losing our holdings in France." And he's like, "What shall we do?" He's like, "Poopy."
So
this king is useless.
Apparently, when he found out that the French had taken Gascony, which was an area that the English had held for a very long time, the king suffered a mental breakdown.
Oh, I can't believe it. How old was he when that happened?
30-something.
Oh, fuck.
More than that. So the Parliament appointed Richard, Duke of York, which was his, I believe, cousin, as the Lord Protector. So the Duke of York and King Margaret of Anjou, which was where the au jus made. Remember, we were talking about that earlier. Queen Margaret was French. She came from Anjou. They kind of had a big power struggle. So Henry VI is out of the picture right now. He's in a straitjacket.
He had a mentee bee.
He had a mentee bee. Nice.
He's off.
Nice terminology, dog. You're really up with the times with these kids.
I've got a 13-year-old daughter. Apparently, I'm a Sigma male.
I don't.
Turns out that's cool.
I don't care.
It seems to be a good one.
I don't.
Do you know what the Sigma thing is?
It's a thing that somebody made up, and then the people who think they are that talk most loudly about it.
I was I don't know. I was at my daughter's 13th birthday, with like her stepdad and her mom and all their idiot kid friends, and they kept calling me a Sigma. But I thought I didn't get it. And I was like, "The fuck are you talking about?"
In the meantime, are you little fucking assholes making fun of me? I'm bigger than you.
What I was doing was ignoring them completely. It was like fucking kicked my feet up on the table, and I was just on my phone. And they'd be like, "Hey, can we have candy?" And I'd be like, "I don't give a shit what you do. Just fucking." and the girls are like, "He's a real Sigma. He's Sigma." And I was like, "The fuck is that?" And I look it up, and it's just an alpha who doesn't give a shit.
That's the dumbest shit I've heard in my life.
I'll take it.
We're not pack animals. We don't have alphas.
No, I know it's literally like the definition that I found is like it's just a guy who doesn't fucking care that much. He's like cool but aloof.
Yeah, the people who say they're alphas are the only people who say they're alphas.
Yeah, I know. I'm stoked on.
They talk the most loudly about
I just liked that a group of kids was like, "Yeah, you're like an alpha, but you don't give a shit about that."
And I just love that these people are like, I like wolves. I'm an alpha.
I like wolves.
Wolves are cool. I'm an alpha. You guys, I lead my own pack.
That's right.
If you're not part of the pack, then fuck off. I'm an alpha.
I roll in my own piss.
I drive a Dodge Charger. I roll in my own piss.
That's what an alpha does.
I drive a Charger and make a lot of money. Don't look at my bank account. I won't show it to you, but I make money. And I get the hottest girls because I'm so alpha.
Yeah, no, apparently the Sigma idea is to not give a shit what kids are doing, ignore them, and then also just fuck around on my phone. That's the...
Yeah. The sign of somebody who doesn't give a fuck is somebody who just goes out and makes money and gets bitches and doesn't talk about it, and they just live their life as a fucking person who doesn't give a good goddamn what you're doing.
Are you indicating that that's you?
No, that's not what I'm saying, because that would fly in the face of everything I just said.
Well, shit.
To you. Yeah. So suck on that, nerd.
You suck on it.
Okay, where are we?
Something about England. I don't know. England's fucking stupid.
We're talking about
bunch of Ponzi dickheads running around an island. Hip, 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 more tea, my lord. Another meat pie, governor.
Oh, just steak and kidney pudding. Eggs, toast and beans. Beans and toast.
Yes. Cheers. Count 3 for Lord Harry and Prince George.
We were talking about Henry VI's mentee bee. I remember.
Oh, they were talking about me being a fucking Sigma. I forgot.
Yeah. So Richard, the Duke of York, and Queen Margaret of Anjou sort of had this big power struggle over who was going to be on the throne, because the Parliament said, told Richard that he was Lord Protector, and he was like, well, then I should be the fucking king. And Queen Margaret was like, no, sorry, you're not the king. And so this turned into this big...
No, sorry.
No, that's not correct.
No, sorry.
So this turned into the beginning of these sort of warring factions, the Lancastrians and the Yorkists, right? Yeah, I hate it. I hate everything about it.
The Lancastrians and the Yorkists.
Lancastrians and the Yorkists. This is our history.
The Yorkists.
This is our history.
You gotta lisp just the little bit at the end. The Lancastrians.
The Lancastrians.
The Yorkists.
The Yorkists. Don't make fun of our history. It's very important.
No.
We have the greatest empire. The sun never sets on the British Empire. You've heard the phrase. I just feel like if there was a Ponzi British guy here right now, I'd be getting slapped with a white glove.
No, somebody
challenged to
of course,
duel.
you know this means war.
Yeah.
You know,
challenge you to a duel.
you know who I'm not making fun of though, are just like working class English people. You know, like,
ones who talk like this.
yeah, fucking
These are all right, innit?
yeah.
They're all right.
I like that shit, but you know, Ponzi,
Yeah.
lords and ladies,
Yeah.
they're the worst.
The ones who are all hemophiliacs because all their moms were their cousins.
Yeah, it's just cousin fucking
brothers. Yeah.
incest
I know what you're
lords.
talking about.
Yeah, fuck those people. I stand in solidarity with the working class and the peasant revolt.
Yeah, no shit, right? The peasant revolt sounds like it was rad.
Should have revolted harder, in my
Yeah,
opinion,
probably.
you know, no disrespect. I understand.
You know, give it a couple of decades, and the French are going to show you how to do it. Remarkably, the French are going to do something right.
Do you know the Scarlet Pimpernel? You ever
I am familiar, but no, I've never read it.
it's one of my favorite like plays ever because it's essentially like this royal British fucking Batman that like goes to France to save the French royals.
Oh,
Yes, those filthy vagabonds.
they need help from me.
Yeah. And like the bad guy,
require my help.
the villain is like a fucking like a French like inquisitor.
Yeah.
You know,
Jesus
trying to find
Christ.
hidden royals so they can execute them, and but the Scarlet Pimpernel is this like he's an English lord, but he hides his identity and writes little limericks like he's just I'm just some poncy English lord.
Yeah,
and then he
Jesus
goes
Christ.
over to France and fucking sword fights and shit. Like it's
God Almighty.
the damned elusive
Well,
Pimpernel.
so back to the War of Roses, right?
Big influence on Game of Thrones.
York claimed the throne. That is Richard, Duke of York, claimed the throne as a descendant of Edward III's son, Lionel, right? Lionel.
Lionel.
He was the Duke of Clarence. Bet he was. So
Hi, Lionel, Duke of Clarence.
So York's son, Edward IV, defeated the Lancastrians and was crowned in 1461, right? Henry and Margaret fled to Scotland with their son, Edward of Minster.
I know that one.
Of Westminster.
They taught me like a rhyming thing when I was a kid. Was it 1641? 1841?
We're in 1460.
1461, the Lancastrians, the ones that had no fun. That's the rhyme.
Stupid as shit. However, you may recall that Henry VI was king from 22 to 61, and then again from 70 to 71, right? So after all the mental breakdowns and Parliament approving Richard and Queen Richard and Queen Margaret vying for power, Richard's son, like I said, Edward IV, emerged victorious in 1461. He captured Henry 4 years later because Henry kind of absconded, right? He captured him 4 years later in 1465.
In England, it's absconded.
So he captures him and he imprisons him in the Tower of London, which is kind of cool, until the Earl of Warwick scatters Edward's forces in 1470 and Henry is returned to power. So there's all this bullshit about like Edward didn't really have a lot of allies. Mm-hmm. So there was one specific region of France that like most of his troops and stuff were being provided, right? He had an agreement, let's say, to marry one of Louis the 11th's, either his daughter or his sister-in-law. He was going to marry. We're talking about Edward IV, right?
That's a lot of Louis.
Yeah, there's 11 of them. We're up to 11, and it's only the 1400s.
Yeah, you get more Louis in there. They keep having them.
They keep doing Louis. So he agrees that he's gonna marry one of them, right? Then he ends up turning around and marrying a divorced woman of sort of questionably common or lesser nobles, which was an affront to King Louis. And so this gentleman, the Earl of Warwick,
Warwick.
The Earl of Warwick.
I know that from watching Warwick Davis's TV show, Life is Too Short.
Well, so he was one of the guys who was sort of helping Edward IV initially, and then he was like, oh, fuck me, fuck you. So he came back. He scattered Edward's forces in 1470 and got Henry out of imprisonment, and Parliament agreed to let him retake the throne. Right. 1 year later, Edward comes back, kills Henry's only son.
Holy shit.
Yeah. So remember when Henry and Margaret fled to Scotland with their son, Edward of Westminster? He killed Edward of Westminster.
God damn. How old was Edward of Westminster?
Little kid. So now Henry VI is without an heir. So he captures Henry again, probably kills him. That's
just probably.
Well, we don't know for sure, but he died shortly after the capture. Probably killed by, maybe not Edward specifically, but upon Edward's orders.
He fell on all of these swords.
The quote was, having lost his wits, 2 kingdoms, and his only son. Because he lost France during all this shit, too. So, yeah, that's, whoops.
Whoopsie daisy.
However, he did leave a legacy of educational institutions, having founded Eton College, King's College, Cambridge, and All Souls College, Oxford. So
Notorious houses of buggery. Yeah.
Oh, perhaps.
That's the stereotype.
Is it?
Yeah.
Well,
just British houses of education. Because they were for hundreds of years just
for elites,
male only elites.
Yeah.
You know, pack a bunch of Ponzi British royal boys into some hot dorm rooms and let them go to town.
So gross. So that leads us to Edward IV, and he will be our last one. Again, just a reminder, he was one of the Yorkies.
Wait, which one is this? Henry the Ninth? Richard the 13th?
Edward IV, who just murdered Henry VI.
Jesus.
Yeah. So yeah, remember we're in the depths of the Yorkist Lancastrian feud.
Yes.
Vying for the throne. So Edward VI reigned for 22 years, asterisk, because the 1 year that he ran away,
right.
and I'm sorry, Henry VI was back. Yeah, I'm back, baby. So 22-year reign.
Guess who's back? The king is back.
He died at 40, so he initially won the throne at 18. But he was obviously constantly at odds with the Lancastrians and his own counselors, because it turns out, by the way, Elizabeth Woodville, the woman of questionable descent that he married, that caused everyone to turn on him.
Common gutter slut.
She wasn't necessarily. She was just okay. He secretly married her after agreeing to marry one of Louis the the 11th's, either his daughter or his sister-in-law. Right? He married her secretly. She was a widow with 2 sons. Her husband was Lancastrian. She's marrying a freaking Yorkist, right? So that put all of his allies that was very uneasy about that, right? You know, there was also like the whole thing she didn't come from upper nobility. She was middle ranking. Her father was like middle ranking provincial baron.
Well, hold on a second. She married a king. It sounds like she did come from upper nobility.
Well, she came for upper nobility, not from. But so yeah, that kind of put the whole thing up in the.
Hey, it's been a while.
In smoke.
We got any dick jokes in the chamber? We haven't made one in a while.
I doubt it. I doubt we haven't made a dick joke.
We haven't made a dick joke in a minute. It's been probably 30 minutes.
We just said she came for upper nobility.
Yeah, that wasn't a dick joke. That was just a sex joke.
Fair.
Yeah, we'll have to figure one out before that.
She came for upper nobility dicks. There, I fixed it. Fixed it.
Wait, hold on a second. Where was our last Richard?
We just had one.
Yeah, which one was it?
It was Richard II.
2 dicks. There you go. Boom.
Stupid ass motherfucker. No, we had Richard of York. That's where the whole power struggle started.
Dick York?
So Dick York. So anyway, Edward IV obviously prevailed. He won the throne back.
He's always out there yorking his dick.
He killed the Lancastrian heir, William of Westminster. And then he eventually captured Margaret of Anjou, sent her into exile. First, he, again, questionably, maybe probably, killed Henry VI. And
like you do.
Yeah. The Wars of Roses still continued intermittently during his reign, and his son Edward V, and Edward V, when he died, his brother Richard III took the throne.
Dickie 3.
Wars with Dickie 3, 3 big dicks. Oh, by the way, Edward, Richard III took Edward V's place. Edward V disappears somewhere and is presumed to be murdered by Richard, his brother.
Dude, this period in British history is a fucking nightmare.
Yeah, ultimately the conflict ended.
No, I'm just saying, I was getting it with the, like, all right, Norman Saxon, cool. All right, then we get down here. Okay, we get the French, we get the Normandy invasion. Okay, then we get Henry V.
Yeah.
Cool, and then it's just like fucking kill, fuck, death, kill.
Ultimately, it all ended in success for the Lancastrian branch, led by Henry Tudor in 1485. When Richard III was killed in the Battle of Bosworth Field. And that is where we'll pick this back up next time with the House of Tudor. God damn. The House of Tudor, by the way, first king of the House of Tudor was Henry VII.
Henry VII.
Henry VII is the one who went against the church and started the Church of England.
I thought that was the 8th.
Nope.
Tudor.
No, Henry VII was the one who wanted to marry Anne Boleyn and divorce his previous wife. But that's for part 2.
Yeah, fuck me. That's
Dude,
a lot
now
to
you
process.
do understand now why when I walked in, I was like, I've only had 2 hours of sleep, and I looked like the guy who like sees the looks into the cave and sees like the thing he's not supposed to see, and then like has aged by 20 years, like all his hair turns white just immediately.
That's not something.
It is. It's a thing.
That's
it's
not.
A thing.
What are you talking? Is there like a legend or something?
There's some legend where if you see the wrong thing, you're just all your hair turns white and
No.
you just age. Yeah, that's a thing.
You're thinking
I
of.
think it's biblical.
You're thinking of sudden unexplained nocturnal death syndrome.
No, I didn't get that.
That's it's like it happens to a lot of like Filipino middle-aged men. Is there Filipino death syndrome? Oh shit! That was an accident.
That kind of scared the shit out of me because I thought somebody was about to bum rush into this room. I couldn't tell that it was laughter at first. It just sounded like a lot of banging. I have headphones on.
But yeah, some Filipino men have been found dead after nightmares and their hair's turned white. It's a thing.
I've heard about that syndrome.
Sudden unexplained suns, SUNDS.
Yeah, being scared shitless while you're dreaming and dying from it.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous, and I don't believe it's true.
Hair shock white.
Well, at any rate, now you understand why this whole week I've been like, fuck. Fuck.
But I don't understand. Wasn't it supposed to start with King Arthur? Where's he?
Hey, Riley, I have something I have to tell you.
What?
King Arthur
Yeah?
is
Son of Uther Pendragon?
yeah. He's actually a fictional character. Yeah. The Lady of the Lake doesn't exist.
Fucking England is a lie!
Excalibur is bullshit.
Excalibur is a... is that the comic book fighting force from Canada? Was that Excalibur?
I have no
Is that
idea.
the one with the pugnacious buck? I don't know. Big comic book guy.
Wasn't Wolverine
Was that
part of that for
X-Force?
a second?
No, X-Force was different. X-Force was a different guy. Yeah, Excalibur was like the Canadian one.
Yeah, and wasn't Wolverine part of that?
Yeah. He was Weapon X. Anyway, thank you guys very much for tuning in to Delete Everything with...
Are we done? Are we done riffing? Are we done?
Do you want to keep going?
Riffing?
We can keep going.
I'm good with it. We could put a maybe not.
Thank you guys for tuning in to Delete Everything with your host, Patrick Wall and Riley Bowen. We will be back next week with another episode of this show.
We appreciate you guys. Please, again,
Rate, review, subscribe.
follow us if you like us. If you're enjoying the show so far, rate us on whatever streaming platform you're using. Spotify and Apple Podcasts specifically have star rating systems, and Apple Podcasts is a big one. If you want to leave us a review, if you want to leave us a note, if you want to send us something on social media, if you have an idea for the show, You can find us Facebook, Threads, Instagram, all at Delete Everything Podcast. We also have Patreon. If you want to, if you want to donate to the show, if you like what we do, you want to give us a few bucks, we have a Patreon. We're doing short episodes every week. We are doing some Q&As at some point. We will scream your name from the rooftop if you I'll name everybody on an episode. Anybody who joins Patreon, I'll be like, hey, shout out to so and so.
Fuck, I'll do the what are those moaning videos? You just moan somebody's name while you jerk it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're gonna be jerking it, or they're gonna be jerking it?
I'll do that. Either or, whatever.
Can both be jerking it?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Well, I know who our first Patreon subscriber is gonna be.
Who's that?
This guy.
You're moaning your own name.
Yeah. No, I want you to moan my name, and we can both jerk it.
I mean, you didn't have to subscribe to the Patreon, but I support I love the support.
But yeah, so our Patreon is very affordable, and you get some extra bonus content and stuff like that. So, guys, thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting every single download, every single listen, every single rating and review, and all that stuff is really, really important to us. We want to keep you guys happy. We want to do stories that you guys like. So we appreciate everything that you do. And we will see you next week.
Yeah, starting next week, going into spooky season. Got some scary content.
We are.
Yeah,
we are, aren't we? Yeah.
So stay tuned.
Ooh, bye. Bye.
Bye.